Hello and good morning to you all watching Roadmap MBA today. My name is Ashleigh King and I'm so delighted to be with you. I've been taking a little break because I wanted to be respectful to our monarch passing away in the UK. So I'm back and I'm really excited to be chatting to you again about business topics and all sorts of things. So if you've not watched Roadmap MBA before and you don't know who I am, I'll share a little bit quickly about myself just to share a bit about me and about Roadmap MBA. So Roadmap MBA is this wonderful real world business education. So this is a fabulous resource that you can access. It's got so many brilliant pieces of information about different topics to do with business, but it really makes it bite-sized and accessible. And we're actually on a mission to help people around the world to build a better life for themselves, creating an accessible platform for all communities to thrive and celebrate together. So we provide online programming and online and offline resources to help you become your best self. So what you can do is you can purchase a course and you can gift a free course. It's a really powerful resource that is now in over 30 countries around the world, and I'm really, really honoured to be one of the Roadmap MBA guest presenters. So we have Steve Pugh, who's the founder of this brilliant platform, and I'm really excited about it because what I believe is that we really do need a shake-up in terms of higher education. I've been musing on this a lot, actually, thinking about apprenticeships recently, as I've been looking to do to hire an apprentice myself, but also looking at resources and apprenticeships that some of my colleagues might be able to do. And it's so affordable to do an apprenticeship rather than a full-time degree, the way that we've always done it for the last 30, 50 years. I'm really excited about the future of higher education, so hopefully you will be too. So my name is Ashleigh King, as I mentioned. A little bit about me is that I am a podcaster. I have a podcast called Nurture Your Zest. I do lots of public speaking. I do lots of training, and it's also really nice to, be able to live present, which has been a new challenge for me that I've tackled this year. So I was asked by Steve to start doing some presenting in March as a trial, and we really liked it. So I've been doing it for a while, and I've learned so much from the experience of turning up and smiling and presenting live. It's quite scary, but it's given me a whole new skill set, and I think it's important to jump out of your comfort zone. It's also brought lots of new opportunities because, like anything, when you put yourself out there and you try new things, you get to learn new skills, and people see you learning those skills and you get offered other things to test you. So I'm really excited about Roadmap MBA, really excited to be here today, and I'll dive right in. So today I'm going to be talking about something that's really important to me at the moment. It's actually productivity and time management hacks for busy people. So I'm really excited about this topic because right now I've never felt more like I need productivity hacks or time management hacks. So I'm going to share with you my top tips today. Before I share that with you, I want to know if you have any tips, if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts about time management or productivity or being busy, please drop a note in the comments because I can see them and then I can respond to you while you're watching live. If you're watching on replay, you can always leave a comment, and if I can, I'll try and reply back later. So it's really great to see anyone watching. But before I dive into why I think productivity and time management hacks matter, I want to tell you a little bit about what I've been up to recently. So if I think about recently, I've been quite busy. I've been a little bit stressed, if I'm honest, and I think the word stress can be quite triggering for lots of people. We can put it in a negative way. I like to think of stress as fuel, as energy, as a resource that we can use and turn into productivity, turn into action. So what I've been doing a lot recently is building a team. So in this lovely team behind me, oh, quite a pixelated image. We've got some of the team at Flamingo Heights. So if you don't know my story, I have a wonderful podcast studio called Flamingo Heights. It's in the Oosburn of Newcastle upon Tyne. Now, I've only just been there a year, so it's just been our anniversary. It's coming up to our launch party. So we officially opened to the public on the 2nd of November 2021. But between September and the November I had spent so much time with various friends and colleagues working to paint and upcycle and redesign the space so that it went from a boring office to quite a quirky, creative and collaborative space. And one of the things that I've been thinking about recently is, how did I get through so much so quickly? And I think part of that was just a really fun bit about, hyper focus, what you can do when you really love what you do, when you have passion for it. You can channel all of that energy into what you're doing. So what I didn't expect is how quickly the studio is growing. So at the moment, I'm still the sole founder. It's my business, but I work with other creatives as a collective. Now that sounds great, and it means it's a creative, busy hub for all kinds of wonderful minds, and I love it so much. But it does mean that there's a lot of responsibility on my shoulders and reputational risk that I hadn't thought about fully. So things like insurance, things like, if we have interns in, there's certain things that I need to have in place, certain pieces of paperwork that I had never thought about. So it's meant that I've been building a team, but I'm also building processes, structures, procedures. And because of that, I really more than ever need to automate and have systems. And this is a real new learning curve for me. So I want to say hi to Graham, who's watching. I agree that automation all the way is the right way forward. If you're doing anything with time management, automation can really help so much. If you've got any tips, Graham, on which automation software you use or which ways you automate things, please let us know. But I love seeing people who are watching live, so really nice to see you, Graham. So what else have I been doing? I sponsored the Women X Film Festival. So Flamingo Heights sponsored Women X Film Festival. This was the most amazing event I've been to for a long time. It was in Darlington. So there's such a thriving creative space and creative industry, especially around film in Darlington, that I wasn't even aware of. Not just Darlington, Stockton, Teesside. It's really exciting and up and coming, and I was really honoured to be asked to sponsor this wonderful event. So we went along, my colleague Joel and I, and we spent the weekend there getting to know some of the delegates, some of the filmmakers, seeing some of the shorts that were sent in for their film competition. I was so impressed with the level of creativity and work and dedication that was poured into this festival, along with all the volunteers who were there helping out. I found it a really uplifting space. It was really empowering space as well. So for those who aren't aware, there aren't that many women in film. And so this film festival features women and non-binary folks in just talking about sharing their ideas. I mean, some of the shorts I watched were the horror section, which if anyone knows me, I'm not massively into horror, but I loved the things that I got to see. So that was a really fantastic event. So I just wanted to give a shout out to that and just, share how inspired I am by all the creative stuff going on in Teesside at the moment. I've also been doing a lot of chatting recently, so as you can probably tell, I like to chat, but we've been making a lot of podcasts again for my own show, which is brilliant because for a long time I wasn't able to make content because I was just too busy, and I'm now back to really prioritizing making content again. So I've had lots of chats with different folks in my studio, Flamingo Heights. And it made me think about the fact that when I got my studio, when I decided to make that investment, the main reason that I did that was because I wanted to have a space to record in. And I wanted to talk briefly about the importance of goals, because when I look every year, I write a vision map or a vision board of my goals every year. And a few years ago, I had on my vision map with all my drawings and doodles and stickers and everything, it said 2 pink chairs for Nurture Your Zest chats. And although these are not pink chairs in the photos here, there are some other photos, if you look at my Nurture Your Zest videos and things, where you'll see that my main setup is 2 pink chairs side by side and 2 microphones, and we actually film like that. And that was a dream of mine, that was just on my vision board, and I forgot about it. And I found that the other day, and I was thinking, wow, isn't it amazing what you can dream up when you have the courage to? So yeah, I think that's really exciting. But making content is fabulous. The thing about making your own content is you need to have the time to be able to share it, to be able to edit it, all those things. So we've been creating a lot of podcasts. Creating a lot of podcasts has also led me to consider or think about, how accessible my building is. I've been having a few struggles with my landlord on this, because from the outside looking in, if you're someone who doesn't have any accessibility requirements, you might easily think that actually we're fully accessible, everything's fine. But there are things like when you come to my building, there is a access, there's a door to get in, but you have to pull it a certain way. There's a lift to get upstairs, but there's still a ramp or a slight step to get up. There's no push bars or anything like that. So I've really been reflecting on what makes a building accessible. What am I an inclusive space? I've always wanted to be an inclusive space for people from all walks of life, and actually I've realized recently how non-inclusive I am in terms of my building, and a lot of that's out of my control. So that's been something that I've been working through and trying to look into, if anyone's watching and knows of any funding in the northeast of England that helps spaces be more accessible, please let me know, because I would love to hear about it. But what that led me to find is that actually I can go into people's homes to record podcasts. So I've been doing that now with some of my guests that I really want to hear their stories, but I just can't have them in my space yet. So I recently interviewed Catherine Paler-Bent, who I know Steve Pugh has also interviewed on this fabulous show. And what I really loved was her story about some of the challenges she's gone through, but how much advocacy she does, the activism she does, and also just her creativity. I loved it. And being in someone's home and interviewing them in their home is a different experience. So I know my team and I really enjoyed that. Okay, so I've also been working with clients to produce podcasts, which has been super, super fun, which I love. So, I'm probably trying to space those out a bit, because I'm quite busy at the moment. So when I do a big project of say 6, 12 or 18 episodes for a series, it takes a lot of my time up. So I want to try and do maybe 2 to 4 of these a year. And at the moment I'm on 4 this year, so that's really exciting. But I've been working on a great project called the Cellar Room Sessions, which is created by White Digital, who are a web development company in Darlington. They also do marketing and advertising. And that's been really fun. So just consulting on their idea of starting a podcast, helping them set up this studio, and then working with them on the first 12 episodes. So it's a really great series. It's hosted by Douglas Dinwoody, the managing director of White Digital. And you can find that by searching for the Cellar Room Sessions. I've also been working on a series called Let's Talk About. So I've been the host of that show, and yeah, that's been great, and to host and produce that along with my colleagues at Flamingo Heights. So we've been pretty hectic, as well as all the one-to-one coaching work that I do to help people who have podcast ideas. So I've also been volunteering my time at super cool events. So for instance, this last weekend I was volunteering my time at the Bright Ideas Conference, which was held in Durham, in the northeast of England. And I think it's something I'm going to come into later, the cost of volunteering and the worth of volunteering, and is it a good idea, should you do it? But I had the best time. I spent my Sunday hearing some amazing ideas and stories, and I think for me, I love being around that creativity, but also I think who you surround yourself with is really important, and being with like-minded thinkers and other folks, on a weekend where we heard stories and ideas from beauty to AI to things like engineering and aerospace dynamics, and just so much that I would never even think about. But my favorite talk was by a guy who actually was coding live and creating music tracks at the same time. And from a production point of view, I just thought that was amazing. He also shared how someone's using his code to actually live DJ, and go around the world and live code music. And I just thought that was incredible. So yeah, I've been doing a lot of volunteering. and also public speaking and training and training and training and so much training. I've been all over doing stuff, mainly around podcasting. And I think that's important, to have a niche, to have a focus, because what I've found is since I've started to talk about podcasting, I mainly get asked about podcasting. So actually it's taking me in the direction of travel that I really want to go. So I had the opportunity to speak recently at the Inspiring Females Conference, which was held by the Northeast Chamber of Commerce. It was a really incredible event, and I was so honoured to be invited to share a workshop on podcasting tips and tricks. And I just thought it was so cool to be with some really inspiring women at this event. And I really loved their stories. So we had Roisin Curry from Greggs, who's the CEO of Greggs, who was sharing some of her ideas around, some of the challenges that they're having as a retail and hospitality business. And I found it so interesting to see their direction of travel, where they're going, but also her leadership journey. One of the things she spoke about is how you need to say yes to opportunities, even if they scare you. And that really excited me. I also liked that John McCabe, who is the Northeast Chamber of Commerce lead, had the time to come along and be there and, make a really interesting speech that day about women and statistics around women and how the chamber is actually hoping to support women in the future. I thought that was really powerful. It's really important that we have male allies who stand up for us, and set an example at a very senior leadership level. So those are all my reflections on what I've been up to. But the reason why I wanted to share that is because, as I said, today I'm talking about productivity and time management hacks for busy people. And honestly, I've just been so busy. I've been really struggling at times. So what happened for me is, this previous time I was at the Northeast Chamber of Commerce. I was speaking. I had a wonderful day. It was a really great event. And then the next day I was delivering a podcast training session in Morpeth. And that same evening the Queen had passed away. And in the UK it was hard to know how to respond, because there was this, I don't know how to explain it. It was like a massive outpouring of grief from a lot of people, a collective grief. And I moved to the UK from South Africa. I'm quite well versed on apartheid and, all of the contentions around the Commonwealth and so many different things that I've researched and looked into. So I could understand that there were different viewpoints about different things. But what I found really hard was all of the noise of all of the social media, all of the notifications. And so I took some time away from social media during that time when many people in the UK were mourning. It was a 10-day official mourning period. And actually, I'm really grateful I took that time away. But it reminded me how much I struggle sometimes with notifications and with various, being really busy all the time. So that's why I thought this is a really good topic for today. Because I think sometimes when we're so busy and then something happens, whether it's to us or around us and it's out of our control, it's really about how we look after ourselves and our mindset that can help us to be resilient. So as I said, I'm going to be talking about productivity and time management hacks for busy people. Why this topic? So it is actually ADHD Awareness Month this month in October. It's also Black History Month, so I'll be doing something on that as well. I did want to talk about ADHD Awareness Month briefly, just to say that, I have ADHD, so attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I am the impulsive hyperactive type, so I have combined ADHD, but I just love to do things and be busy all the time. And what I've noticed is, since I've been diagnosed, there's lots of things that I've been able to do to get better support for myself. So that could be automation, or it could be being more clear with your boundaries. But there's a lot of things I've learned that I thought might be helpful to other folks. So I thought I would share that today. So what's the deal with being busy? That's what I want to ask you. Well, for me, I think it's a really interesting thing. How many times, and you can say in the comments or comment later, or just think about this on your own, but how often when you see someone do you say, oh my gosh, I'm so busy, or what have you been up to? Are you busy? Or hey, it looks like you're really busy at the moment. And why are we so obsessed with being busy? And I think one of the things I talk about a lot on this show is being an entrepreneur. So I have, the viewpoint of coming from a small business perspective, but I also have worked in corporate roles, in higher education mainly, where it was so busy every day. I've never worked harder than when I worked in higher education. And I think to myself, well, how is it so busy? And a lot of that is because of governance and systems and a way of doing things and protocols that sometimes are unnecessary or overly bureaucratic, or sometimes it can be great things. There's just not enough people to fill the need for what the work is required. So I think for me, one of the things I've been musing on and reading about is the idea of busyness as a trauma response. So there is an idea that if you are someone who has unresolved trauma, or even just for all of us, whatever that might be, it doesn't need to be something particularly horrendous that's happened to you in your life, but anything that maybe you want to be distracted by, whether that's, an argument with a friend, or whether it's staying away from something that you just don't want to think about, we sometimes can throw ourselves into our work. I know I do this. I'm an absolute workaholic if I'm going through something in my personal life. But what I've thought about recently is, the more that I act like that, the more I set a poor example to my team as I'm now building a team. And also, I think the thing about glamorizing being busy is that it's not really that healthy, because if you're just working, your productivity actually starts to dip and you become less effective. So I also think, on the other side of things, when you start a business, or when you're really passionate about something, you want to do it all the time. So I don't want to shame anyone who is busy or who is hustling, because I think there is a real value in the hustle. And at the beginning of any business or in any job that you love, there is a learning curve to go through. There is a hustle. So I want to focus, for me, less on being busy, but more on outputs, and outcomes that are tangible, that can be measured, because it's a completely new way of thinking for me. I've always just considered how much effort I put into things, but I think that measurability of what you do is really important too. So I wanted to talk about the power of language again. So I recently did a talk for the Roadmap MBA on neurolinguistic programming, and you can watch that back if you like, and if you hopefully you'll enjoy it and find some tips there. But one of the things around the power of language is, in neurolinguistic programming, NLP, we say there is a principle of say it like you want it. So if we're saying, oh, I'm so tired, I'm exhausted, I'm busy, and we're not mindful of how we say those things, we can actually keep telling our body, I'm so exhausted, I'm so tired, and we start to become ill and we start to become tired. And so one of the things I wanted to think about is, for me, I've started to say things like, oh, I'm feeling less energetic today, or I'll try to think more about if I'm feeling so tired, well, what will energize me? Will it be doing jumping jacks? Will it be putting on my favorite song and dancing around sillily for a few minutes? But our language is so important. So some of the things which we've discussed before, but we're all at cause versus effect. Everything in your life you have created, which can be very difficult to understand as a concept at first. It was for me. But the idea that there are external factors that are going to be going on around you. It could be that your boss wasn't very nice to you today. It could be that you've got people just dumping work on your desk. But what we can do is we can control our own circle of influence and our own sphere of control. So that's the wonderful I've got Stephen Covey, sorry, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. But when you look at what's in your control and what you can do and how you can actually micro hack your life to be that tiny bit better, 1% every day, you give yourself that control back. And that's really helped me. It's really nice to see some of the comments in. I think it's so true. Yeah, the words that we tell ourselves are really important. That self-talk is what holds us back so much sometimes. And also another NLP principle is about perception as projection. So if you have negative self-talk, you're actually projecting that out and other people see that. And so it's really important to think about your thoughts, because thoughts become things. So some of the ways that we do this is we say, it's so busy, it's hectic. Another one that we say a lot is, it's crazy, it's so crazy right now. And actually I'm looking at the moment about language and ableism, and I didn't realize that actually saying it's crazy is a really triggering word, and it's actually a very ableist term that is now being something for people to look at. And you know, if we say, oh, it's absolutely mental at work, that's words that maybe we need to reconsider using. So so thinking about that is important too. Sometimes we say, oh, I'm so busy, but I don't have time for lunch today. I'm so hungry, but actually I've got to get this done. So those buts, we putting blocks in our own way, sometimes for the things that we need to do for our self-care. Sometimes I've started to look at impulse differently now that I've been diagnosed with ADHD. So one of the things about being impulsive is sometimes you just want to follow the dopamine, you want to do whatever your mind wants you to do at that time. But what I've started to realize is those impulses are tiny little messages from my body to myself to say, hey, the reason you really want to go and become a hungry bear and eat everything in the cupboard is because you haven't eaten all day and you completely forgot to eat because you were so engrossed in what you were doing. So actually, you know, pre-planning your food and having pre-packed snacks and things you can do takes a bit of time and planning, but helps you to maintain your energy and maintain better productivity and things like that. The other one that I see all the time, and I know I've spoken about this before, and Steve and I have had a really good conversation after, but just, you know, can you just do me this favor? Can I just ask you a quick question? Could you just quickly write this reference for me? It'll only take you 10 minutes. No, it won't. It'll take me an hour and a half. You know, so that just, can you just do this one thing? Whether you're asking someone else to do that or someone else is asking you to do that, just can be a really tricky word, because it feels like whatever they want or whatever you want is really small, but you don't know what other people are working on or what they have got going on. And you know, it's quite a big ask sometimes. So I'm trying to stop saying the word just. Really nice to see you, Jude. It's wonderful to see people watching that I haven't seen for a long time. I'm really happy you checked in. Thank you, Jude. So I'm so bad at this. So when we say, oh, I can't do this, I can't do time management. So for so many years, that was my words. I would say, oh, well, I'm always late. I've just always been that way. I struggle with time. And actually, I'm working so hard to get better at that. I still mess up sometimes, but what I know is I don't want to be someone who's just making excuses all the time. I want to take responsibility for my actions and the things that are in my control. And then if I am late, it'll be for a genuine reason. So I think those are just some thoughts around language with productivity and time management that I wanted to share. But something else that I've learned that's really important is when you say yes to something, you're actually saying no to something else. And so I wanted to touch on the opportunity cost of things. Now, I had never ever heard of opportunity cost before until I did my Masters in Business Administration and MBA with Newcastle University Business School. And this is why I'm so excited about the Roadmap MBA and why I think it's such a brilliant product, because I think it was great what I did. You know, I did a full-time MBA and I studied for just over a year. It was a really intensive and brilliant experience, but the opportunity cost involved in that was significant. So when we say yes to something, it's important to consider, well, what are the costs involved, and not just the time costs. So the time is a huge one, and it's something I just thought, oh, well, we've got lots of time, it's fine. But actually time is a huge thing, especially where we're talking about ADHD Awareness Month. You know, time blindness is a huge issue for people with ADHD, where we don't see time in the same way as other people, and we think we can fit absolutely everything in because we're so excited and passionate about what we want to do, but we burn ourselves out. So opportunity cost, you do need to consider time. you also need to consider the cost, the financial cost that you're putting into something. Also, you know, things like your energetic costs. So what I mean by that is, you know, how much energy is it going to take from you? Is it an activity that's going to increase your energy? Is it going to drain you? So I love to speak, for instance. I'm doing lots of public speaking at the moment, sometimes 2 or 3 times in a day. And that means that I know that on those days I can't do any desk work, because apart from maybe answering a couple of emails and maybe doing a social media post, all of my energy will be going into spending time with people. Whereas if I need to have a day doing written work where I'm spending time focusing and really getting my head down in something, I need absolute silence and no talking at all, and maybe some classical music. So it's really important when you say yes to something, what are you saying no to? Also consider your family obligations. So, you know, if you say yes to volunteering on a weekend, like I did on Sunday, which I loved, what are you saying no to? Are you saying no to time with your family to get together for someone's birthday? Or are there things that maybe you could have done, even if it's things like catching up on your chores? Because what I've noticed is over the years, I've given so much and worked so hard doing so many things, but then I sometimes struggle to do my own self-care and productivity stuff that will help me set up myself for the week. So I've learned that self-care is not just journaling and candles and bubble baths and all these things that I really love and really value. It's also things like doing your dishes and filing your tax return and, you know, opening your mail. And so these are all really important things. I wanted to touch on maximizing your networking opportunities. So my top tip with that is actually a tip I learned from a great lady called Jenny Smith, who's a networking strategist. But Jenny talks about when you go to a networking event, it's really good if you can actually put a meeting in beforehand or afterwards, so that you maximize your time. So one of the things I've had to do recently is look at my time and where it's going. And I recently just did a random audit of a week in my diary. Okay, in that week I had 8 networking events that I'd booked onto. And I was actually quite shocked at that number of events, because I thought, oh, well, I don't do that much networking anymore. But that was just 1 week. And when I sat down and became quite strict about what I was doing, I saw that only 2 of those I needed to attend and 6 of those could go. And what that made me realize is it is important to think when you're networking, why are you going? What are you intending to get from that event? Are you hoping to touch base with, you know, familiar faces? You know, relationship building and network and marketing is really powerful. So is that what you're going for? Are you hoping to meet a certain amount of leads? Are you hoping to tell people about a particular product you've got or service coming up, or something you want to raise their attention of? Are you really taking into account all of the costs? So for instance, if I bought myself a cocktail at every networking event I went to and it was £10, for instance, that could be £80 in a week that I would spend just on cocktails. And that's just one drink. For instance, if I get a taxi to that networking event, that might be £5 to £7 in an Uber, and in an isolated purchase, it doesn't seem that much. But again, if you're getting a taxi there and back, that could be £14. So already you might have spent, you know, £24 just on a drink and some taxis, or petrol or parking fees or things like this. So actually, Jenny's got a really good point about getting all of those networking things together and trying to do one back to back. For instance, if they're both in the same area within an hour, and you can go from one event to another. I did this recently. I went to do some networking in Teesside for the Women X Festival, as I shared earlier, and I actually built a whole itinerary around that Women X Festival, where Joel, my colleague, and I went and we did some filming in Durham. We did a whole day of different activities to maximize our potential of meeting people while we were in the area. So I think it's really important to think about where you are spending your time are the networking events you're going to worthwhile? And sometimes it's okay to actually leave groups that you're already in, because what will happen is sometimes you need to go to another level, or you need something else, something different. So I've started to think about all the things I'm paying into. I recently joined the Chamber of Commerce, and I am absolutely loving it, and that has meant that I've been able to actually cancel a lot of other networking activity, because the leads and the business contacts and the connections and the profile raising of the chamber for me has been much more valuable than some of the other activities I've been involved in previously. If you have a top networking tip, or if you have an event that you love to go to, please drop it in the comments. I always love to hear other people's perspectives. So I wanted to talk about the real costs and value of free work. So I am someone who for years has volunteered, has spoken for free. I've joined charities, I've joined boards, you know, I've given a day here, a half an hour there, you know, done free speaking engagements. And I wanted to really think about that for a moment. So I've always thought that if you volunteer for something, it's just a day. So what's the issue with that? It's just a day out of your week, and that's fine. But actually, as I mentioned, you know, you've got to think about the costs to get to wherever you're going, the time that you need to be prepared or go to bed early or make sure that you're up so you're ready for that space. You need to read the briefing notes. So I know this very well from boards and charities, and I'm sure anyone who's been in that position as a trustee will know the time that goes into reading board papers takes a really long time. So there is a cost in terms of time that goes into these things. At the same time, I wanted to talk about the value of free work, because someone said to me the other day, oh, well, you know, will you come and speak at this event? We'd love to have you. We'd love to, you know, we know you'll inspire lots of young women, and we think you'd be great for this. But it was a non-paid opportunity, and I actually made the decision to turn that down. Now, that might seem kind of ruthless, especially if I've said that I'm volunteering a lot or I've got a big history of volunteering. But I don't need any more exposure at the moment. And for those who've ever been in the creative industries or things like that, we know that exposure doesn't pay the rent. I love to give back. I love to give back to my community. But what I've learned is that actually I've had a bit of a value shift from giving and giving all the time. And giving is actually something that people with ADHD do often. We give and we give and we give because we want people to like us and because we love helping. But the thing is, that means that we can sometimes feel exhausted and overwhelmed. It's also a very common issue for women as well. And what I've learned is that actually, when I'm giving and giving and giving, I have no energy or space for myself. So I said no to this opportunity recently where I was being asked to, you know, go and inspire young women in schools. Because if I go and do that for free, it's not just the hour talk that they want you to do, it's the getting to the event. It's also things like the transport to get to that event, especially if it's out of the way of where you would normally go. And one of the things I've started to notice is when I'm speaking at events now, there's always an hour and an hour after buffer where people want to talk to you. So actually that could be a whole day before you've even done any work. And so when you are trying to grow something and build something as a small business, your time is so precious. And so what I've really thought about that is I can give more if I build my platform. You know, I'm already working with young women all the time, mentoring them one-to-one, you know, giving time back in other ways. And I know that the more I spend my time efficiently, the more stories I can share with the world, which will inspire other women in other ways. So I think there's something to think about for anyone watching or listening who maybe is doing a lot of volunteering or would like to do volunteering. It is so valuable. You get to meet the most amazing connections. I still meet people all the time now who I've worked with maybe years ago, and we still, you know, have a lot that we could do together and share together, and I still do volunteer my time. But what I do now, and this might be helpful for anyone listening too, is if I'm asked to speak at an event for free, what I'll always do is say, well, could you do a social media post about it? You know, could I have some free advertising in return? I try to have some kind of exchange so it's not just free. I think it's important to honor yourself and honor your time. What I've noticed is the more I say no to things, the better opportunities are coming my way because of the opportunity cost that we talked about. So when you've got the time available to do things, it can help take you closer to your dreams. I think it's really important to think about where you want to be. So having goals and working towards them can help you with all of these decisions, because when you have clear goals and when you know what your strategy and your priorities are, it helps you to decide what is important to you. So it becomes much easier to make decisions because you know that it's either in line with your goals and it's taking you forward to that, or it's not in line with your goals. So one of the things that Steve Pugh, the founder, does here is he actually has a framed print of all the things that he could do every day, and they're all a list of things that he can do, but it's one tiny thing that he can do to move him forward to his goals every day. So that could be to reach out to a new LinkedIn contact, it could be to write a blog, but he has a list that he can work through. He could do lots in one day, or he could do a couple. But having something that actually takes you towards your goals is really important. For me as a visual learner, and one of my biggest productivity hacks is to actually have all of my goals on my wall, and having calendars that I can scribble on and get really tactile with. I wanted to talk about how to tackle a noisy mailbox and your notifications. So I found that as my personal profile is growing, because I have my own podcast and I'm doing public speaking and I'm doing training and I'm doing all these things, I have struggled to keep up with my mailbox. I've struggled to keep up with everything that is coming in, the amazing opportunities coming in. I've also struggled to keep up with all of the notifications on LinkedIn, for instance, or other social platforms. So if you have any tips on that, please let us know. But I did want to say that some of the things that I'm doing that are helping me are actually deleting notifications. So if you go into Facebook or LinkedIn, or even in your messages inbox, there is an opportunity to either delete the notification or to mute certain notifications, but you can also archive chats. So I find it quite hard to know if I've read something and then haven't responded to someone. And I do this often and I never mean to, but it's just, if you're getting, hundreds of messages every day, you don't always see them. So what I do is I actually archive a conversation once I'm done with it. So it clears out of my LinkedIn mailbox, for instance, and then I know that whatever's there is just what I haven't answered yet. We've had some tips actually about having your phone on silent. So having your phone on silent is a great tip. I put my phone in do not disturb at certain parts of the day. I also mute my notifications as well. I think it's important to think about, one of the things I've been musing on is when we react so quickly and we send an email and we say, I need this now, I've got to have this now, and we might send that to a client, or we're on the receiving end from a client. But sometimes things might change, in half an hour or in a couple of minutes. So actually, what I do is I only check my emails in the morning and the afternoon, and in the evening. So I've got set intervals at different parts of the day when I check my emails, and then I have time set aside to do other work. At the moment, if it's a sales email, I'll either reply, because I like to reply if I can, and say, look, I'm not interested, or I'll unsubscribe, or I'll delete it. But I try to minimize what's coming into my mailbox. So I'm a big fan of the unsubscribe button. If you look at all of your mailing lists, if you check your what's coming in, what brilliant newsletters you're on, some of them are great, but some of them might just be feeling like, why am I getting this message? If you have things that you feel yucky about, just unsubscribe, or put them in a rule set to go to a folder so that you only check that when you have time to check those newsletters, and then it doesn't take you away from tasks that you should be on track with. Jude shared that you should check your email 3 times a day and schedule the time. I'm glad that you do that. I do the same. it really helps me. And what I also do is set an out of office to say, look, I only check my emails at these times, or if you're a client, drop me a text if it's something urgent and I'll call you right away. But one of the things I've noticed is when we're out filming and doing other things, we don't have time to be glued to our emails. I think using your mailbox, your emails, as your to-do list is actually quite a damaging thing to do. So if, for instance, I used to do this, I used to turn up to work, whether for working for myself or for another business, and I would look at my mailbox as my list of things to do for the day, what, depending on who was chasing what was coming in. But actually, when you just look at your emails all day, you can be very busy just doing emails, and it doesn't give you the time to do the planning or the strategy that sometimes is so important. It's also about boundaries. So, it might be that you need to say to people, look, I check my emails at and social hours, but I don't expect a reply. Or drafting emails, I do that a lot. I draft emails to schedule to go out at a later time, at a more socially acceptable time, like 8 a.m. rather than 3 a.m. when I'm most productive. So those are just some of my tips. I also use a lot of categories. I use things like color coding in my mailbox to keep it simple. But one of the things I've learned that's so valuable is the archive button. I tend to use folders less now, because unless it's a rule like newsletters to go to a folder, I find being able to just archive something and then search for it when I need it is great. So the last thing I wanted to share before I wrap up today is why you should work with your body clock. Rather than against it. So as I just mentioned, my most productive time is 3 a.m., which sounds wild to some people, I'm sure, but that is when my brain wakes up and it goes, ping, I need to do this. And I find even if I'm just lying in bed with my eyes closed, I will get so many brilliant ideas, or things that I've been stuck with for weeks will just pop up in my head and I'll have the answer. And in the past, and sometimes I still do if I'm feeling stressed, I might play games on my iPad, or I might watch some Netflix, or watch silly videos on Facebook or YouTube. But what I've started to do is get up and get my journal out and just write all the things that I'm worried about, or just a mind, map of everything that's in my mind. Some people call it a thought dump. So you would just write as many pages as you want about everything you need to do, and then what you can do with that information. And I've found that since I've started doing that, it's really been a huge help, because once it's on paper, then there's a step that you can do with that, and it just takes all that pressure away from you having to carry and hold that information. I think another thing about working with your body rather than against it is, if for instance, I never have breakfast because I fast, and that's not, something that I ever really was aware of. I just naturally do it. So I've started to just follow my body and just eat intuitively when I'm hungry. But actually, by listening to my body rather than forcing it to have breakfast, I don't feel tired after breakfast or snacking the rest of the day. And then when I do eat, I really value what I'm eating. And I think it's important to look and work with your body and see what you are, what are the things you're struggling with? What are the things that you could do better? And those tiny micro improvements can help. I know that I'm reading so much at the moment, and one of the books I really wanted to give a shout out that I adore is Atomic Habits. It's a fabulous book if you haven't had the chance to read it, but it talks about how you can make your life easier by tiny little steps each day that you can improve, and then they start to compound. So I hope you've enjoyed some of these tips. As I said, during ADHD Awareness Month, this was something that was really important to me because I've come so far. But I think the biggest thing I want to leave you with is ask for help. Sometimes it's not about, what you need to do, but it's what you can delegate. It's what you can ask for help with and what you can get support with. And whether you are in an organization or working for yourself, there are communities around you. So whether that might be joining a Facebook group that has a special interest like yours, it could be about dinosaurs, it could be about festivals, it could be whatever your interest is. But do things that you love and that you're passionate about, and surround yourself with people who have different skills to you, because you never know when you might be able to work together on something, and that that disruption, those different skills can really create some amazing opportunities for innovation. So that's my thoughts today. Thank you so much for anyone listening, and I'll catch you next time.